Morning everyone, it's Liam here from Rating the Races. So it's the handicap mark changes day today. It's Tuesday, which is always one of my favourite days, but busy days. Love looking through the handicap marks to see what I can spot. And I think I've found quite a few this week. Obviously, this includes Boxing Day and the 27th of December. Is that St. Stephen's Day? Their days were obviously carried forward because they were Sunday and Monday, respectively. So let's have a look at some of them. I've also found what I think are going to be their targets. So let's go through them. The first horse I want to talk about is a horse called Ask Dylan. He dropped £1 down to a mark of 140. Let me just move my bit of paper in front of me so I don't have to keep moving my neck. I've actually got a bit of a sore neck. Dropped £1 to 140. That now means he is £4 lower than when he was sixth back here in the Potemps final. Now, that's where I think he's going to run again. I think he's going to run in the Potemps final, and I would imagine that they go to Exeter again to get him qualified in February. It's this one here. Get him qualified. Now, he actually dropped £2 when he finished fourth in the qualifier. If he dropped another £2 down to a mark of 138, he would suddenly it'd be £6 lower than when he was sixth in the final last year, in a final that I think was quite good as well. He could be quietly interesting in the Potemps final. Unfortunately, the Potemps final is a race that I'm finding 6 or 7 that look nicely handicapped or I just paused then because I thought my video had stopped, but it hasn't. That look nicely handicapped and has certainly been targeted towards this race. So I will have to go over that Potemps final again to find the horses that I really like and those that maybe just caught my eye but aren't really big players in the race. So let's move on to the second horse, and I have mentioned him before, and that is Christopher Wood. He finished second at Musselburgh at the weekend in the Hogmanay Hurdle. He chased home Tommy's Oscar. Now, Tommy's Oscar is being talked about as going to Haydock for the Grade 2 and then being aimed at the Champion Hurdle. Well, if Tommy's Oscar is a Champion Hurdle horse, finishing second, there's nothing wrong with that. I was surprised he was dropped £1. Where's he going to run? I think that's obvious. Back to the Scottish County Hurdle at Musselburgh on the 5th of February. It's this race here. He won it last year. I would imagine that's where they go. Who's going to be his biggest danger in that? I think we can work that out as well. Voix de Rêve. Voix de Rêve was second in it last year. Here, having finished second in the Hogmanay Hurdle. And that they came off a mark of 146. Just reading down. 146. So if he took on Christopher Wood, he would actually be £10 better off, because although Christopher Wood is, I think he's £2 lower, Angus Chalada no longer claims 7, he claims 5. So effectively, Christopher Wood would be running off the same mark, but Voix de Rêve would be running off a £10 lower mark. That would clearly give Voix de Rêve a huge chance of reversing the form. He was only beaten 3.5 lengths. So I think both of those are nicely handicapped. Why I highlight both of them, if Voix de Rêve doesn't turn up, I'd really like Christopher Wood in the race and I'd be keen on him. If Christopher Wood doesn't turn up in the race, Voix de Rêve, I would be really keen on. If they both turn up, probably would be more looking at Voix de Rêve purely because he's £10 better off for 3.5 lengths. So let's move on to the next one, and it's Good Risk at All. Now, obviously, we know a little bit about Good Risk at All. He finished second recently to John Bon, and the handicap has dropped him recently for collateral form. He dropped him £1 to 124. 124 seems a very low handicap mark considering who he was beaten by. He was beaten by John Bon. If John Bon goes and wins the Supreme Novice and ends up rated 150 something, the horse who was beaten 6 lengths and actually gave him a decent race, it's like could be £30 lower. Where do I think they should run him? which race is it? Saturday. Here. What's on Saturday the 12th? The Imperial Cup. I do think Good Risk at All is well handicapped off 124. So go for a decent race. The Imperial Cup's a good race, and obviously it would put them in for the bonus, which they can try and find a race. If he needs stepping up in trip, they could look at like the Martin Pipe, and if he doesn't, they could potentially run in their County Hurdle, and I think he would run a big race. So yeah, I think Good Risk at All, since he goes handicapping, will be very, very interesting for a mark of 124. The next two horses have both dropped in the handicap. Pillion's dropped £1 to 136, and Our Dancer's dropped £2 to 144. Both of them are qualified for the Pertemps final, and that's the only place I would want to be getting involved in them two, is the Pertemps final. If they run elsewhere, I'm not really that keen on them. I don't think Our Dancer, I thought his fourth at Sandown was a good run, but it probably wasn't that good a run because the form hasn't worked out. Pillion has disappointed as well. The reason Pillion would be interesting in the Pertemps final, though, is obviously back here in March 2020, he finished second in the Martin Pipe, just run down by Indefatigable. Cheltenham form does come back time and time again, particularly Cheltenham Festival form. So he's not one to give up on, but it would be, I'd be more looking at him for the Pertemps final only. Similarly to Our Dancer, I don't really know where else they could go with those, that they could find a decent race. The next horse, I do think they can find a good race, and I think there's another obvious one, and the horse in question is Cateson. Cateson finished second, albeit beaten a long way by Bells of Peterborough at Chepstow, but that was over 3 mile on soft ground, and I don't think Cateson quite gets the 3 mile on soft ground, particularly the way they ride Cateson, which is forward. Where do I think they'll run next? Here. Dropping back in trip, go to Ascot, finished third last year behind Arrivederci and Craignish. That came off a mark of 139, could turn up of 131, an £8 lower mark for finishing third behind two improving unexposed horses. It looks the most logical plan. Whether Alistair Ralph agrees there, we will see. But that would be where I would send Cateson next. Off an £8 lower mark, you would imagine that Cateson can run a big race there. That's on the 22nd of January, so not too long, 18 days' time. So we will see what the trainer decides. The next horse I want to talk about, If the Cap Fits. He's obviously potentially ridiculously well handicapped. Now running off a mark of 142 after dropping another £3. And the reason he interests me for the Pertemps final is he's now qualified. He finished fourth at Wincanton, which was a qualifier, and he's in. I don't understand why they keep going forward on him. They keep going forward over 3 mile, and yet when they ran a really good race at Haydock at Aintree behind Brewing Up a Storm, they didn't go forward over a shorter trip. And I wonder whether they're deliberately going forward to try and get his handicap mark down, knowing that that's not quite the way to run him. They got him qualified, which was the big thing, at Wincanton on Boxing Day. And now they can look at reverting to the hold-up tactics in a race that actually is worth something and is worth going for in the Pertemps final. So If the Cap Fits just catches my eye for the Pertemps final. As I've mentioned, unfortunately, we've got 7 or 8 at the moment for the Pertemps final. I will be going over them probably today and really highlighting those that I'm keen on and highlighting those that I've mentioned but probably aren't as well handicapped or haven't been as laid out for the race as the others. Hopefully I can rule out a few. Spirit of the Games just about makes this video. I almost crossed him out and thought I'm giving up with Spirit of the Games completely. In terms of winning races, he doesn't win very often, but I do think he's one that, if you got a big enough price at the Cheltenham Festival, could be a decent each way bet. If he runs, he's now dropped another £2 despite running over hurdles. He dropped £2 over fences. He dropped £2 to 137. If we look at his form over 2.5 mile with soft in the going description, so that could be good to soft, soft, or even heavy, at the Cheltenham Festival, at Cheltenham over 2.5 mile, his form reads third, pulled up, second, sixth, second. 4 places there. If you can get 6 places at some of the handicaps, you could say it was 5 places. But we'll say it's 4 places, and they came off £9, £10, £12, and £11 higher marks. Well, that demonstrates he's clearly very well handicapped. He just needs to get the tactics right. I thought going forward over 3 mile over hurdles doesn't work, and didn't work again. And I think he wants 2.5 mile, softer conditions, but to be held up, maybe not quite at the back, just sit him in mid-division. And I think he runs his best races when ridden like that. When he's right out the back, he doesn't get involved. And when they go forward, he gets tired, particularly when they step him up, try and back over 3 mile. His only run recently over 2.5 mile was when he was 9th, but that was on good going. They went from the front, and those at the front stayed there. They didn't really pick up from the back. So I wouldn't be giving that as... I wouldn't be knocking him for that effort. He then finished, if we go back, he finished 8th at Warwick. Okay, maybe didn't run his race there. But before that, it was 2nd at Cheltenham. So it was only 3 runs ago that he actually had Cheltenham, his conditions, and was ridden correctly. That he actually ran a good race. He was 2nd. So that's where I hope they run. That would be the only interesting race for him, is the plate. At the Cheltenham Festival. If he turns up somewhere else, probably wouldn't be looking at getting him involved too much. The next horse is also going to be surely aimed at the plate, and that's Zanza. They put cheek pieces on, and I would imagine that was to try and keep him involved. He jumped atrociously, and disappointed he pulled up, but he pulled up quite quickly. You can actually see here his win PR was 1.2%, which means he only just about shortened in the run. Why? Because he jumped so poorly. He was never involved. He was never going to get any closer. Now, if they take those cheek pieces off, the drop of £1 to 146 could be, he could be nicely handicapped again. He finished 2nd in December at Cheltenham over 2.5 mile. That's where I think he needs. Go to the plate. They'll go faster. He can run on through the horses and potentially get there in time this time. So if you did back Zanza this time, just because he pulled up, don't give up on him. They'll take the cheek pieces off, and he could run a much better race next time. Another horse that pulled up at Cheltenham that I want to give another chance is Honest Vic. Similarly, he jumped very poorly. This was his first run in handicap company over fences, and he didn't jump great at all, as I said, and pulled up. But he pulled up quite quickly. They pulled him up 4 or 5 from home, rather than getting into the straight and then pulling him up with 2 to go. And I just wonder whether they felt, this is a waste of time. We're not going to get close. There's no point continuing through the race, running 3 mile and then pulling him up. Let's pull him up at 2.5 mile, which they did. He dropped £2 to 139, and if he turned up in the old team off 139, I'd be very keen on him still. But I hope that they can get him a bit more experience and another run, so that he doesn't turn up off the back of a pulled up effort. And the race I would be looking at is this one here. There's a 3 mile handicap chase at Kempton for 0 to 140 horses. Now, obviously, being rated 139, he gets in, but also he has this Kempton win to his name over 2.5, and he was quite impressive that day. So I think the 3 mile trip at Kempton, where we know he can run well, and against lesser opposition, I think he'll run a really big race. If he did win it, he might go up £2 or £3 because he's taking on lesser opposition. So £2 or £3, say he went up £3 and he ran off 142. Would I be keen on him in the old team off 142? Yes. I could give him up to 144, and if he turned up off the back of a win, I think he would be full of confidence, and they'll be nicely handicapped still. So that's where I would be aiming on this bit. Go to Kempton, try and actually win the race, turn up at Cheltenham for the old teamer, in form, and with that experience under his belt, and I think he'd run a very big race. Riders on the Storm. is my next one, and he dropped £2 for finishing 12th, down to a mark of 145. Now, if you look here, you can see that he traded 85.41% lower in the run because he travelled really well. When he was actually at the top of the hill, I looked at Riders on the Storm and I looked at Simply the Bets, and I said if I wanted to be on one of those at that point, it was Riders on the Storm. I felt Simply the Bets was just being nudged along, whereas Riders on the Storm was still travelling really strongly. He's faded dramatically, but when I messaged and put a public tweet out, I tagged in his owner, Carl Hinchy, and he suggested that Riders on the Storm got very excited, worked up, and was too keen in the race and got there too soon. So where could they go with him next? Probably not to Cheltenham. Let's go to Ascot. He's got 2 wins at Ascot in December and February, December 2019 and February 2020. And this one actually came in a Grade 1 in February. He could run in the handicap this time. There's this Bet365 Steeple Chase, over 2 mile 5. It's a handicap. He's down to a mark of 145, as I mentioned. And last year he would have carried 11 stone 3 in the handicap. For a Grade 1 winner, you normally expect them to be carrying 11 stone 12 in handicaps if they do drop back into handicaps. He's got good form at Ascot, as I've mentioned, and I really think, I believe that's where they will run, and think he would be a really good bet in that handicap at Ascot, where hopefully he's not quite as keen. He enjoys the experience more and can go very close there. The next horse I want to talk about is Captain Noor, who has dropped £4 to 129, and he's now getting ridiculously well handicapped, like crazy handicapped. And I think the race that I'm hoping they're going for is the Sky Bet Handicap at Doncaster. It's this one here, in which he was third in last year. You can actually see he was third and was tipped up by 29 people in the NAP competition. That came off the back of finishing second at Kempton to Royal Pagaille, which was probably why he was so well supported at Doncaster. But he still finished third. He finished third behind Taking Risks and I Right, both good horses. Taking Risks had obviously won a rehearsal chase, whilst I Right ran in every single big handicap and has won a decent handicap this year. When he finished third, he finished third off a mark of 139. He could run it off 129, so £10 lower. And I think his effort at Kempton was a bit of a strange one. Ellis Collier took the ride, and no disrespect to them, I think they got the tactics wrong. They went forward. He very rarely goes forward, if at all. They went forward, they took on a stablemate, and I just wonder whether they realised that they weren't going to beat their stablemate in 5-Star Getaway, who was potentially well handicapped, so gave him a good spin from the front for the jockey, and they felt that the horse would tie up late on and drop in the handicap. The Sky Bet Chase could have been the target rather than the Kempton race, which the trainer won anyway. So hopefully he runs in the Sky Bet Chase next at Doncaster, where again I think he would be a good bet in the race. I'm hoping that, having disappointed at 9-2 and 7-2, they open him at 12s, 14 to 1, and we can get a bit of a better price on Captain Noor next time. The final horse I want to talk about is Kitty's Light. Now, as you know, I felt Kitty's Light would have been a good horse for the Welsh National. Connections felt the softer going doesn't suit, so they didn't run him, which is, fine. However, I thought he ran a good race at Kempton on soft going over 3 mile, which would not have suited him. 3 mile is not far enough for Kitty's Light, even more so at Kempton. As you've heard me say in these videos, think a Kempton 3 mile is only 2 mile 4, 2 mile 6 if it's on soft going. Now, with that in mind, dropping £4 to 143 I thought was hugely eye-catching. Should never have been dropped £4. I would have left him as he is, to be honest. I know the handicapper can't take into account the conditions probably weren't right, as in the course and the distance weren't right for him. Where would I go with him? Well, I would save him now. I wouldn't look at any of the big handicaps on this potentially soft going that connections don't think he wants. Well, save him then for the Scottish National. Save him for the Scottish National on the 2nd of April. It's a good prize. It's 3 miles 7 and 200 yards, I think. It's likely to be on better going. It brings into kitties like stamina. We know he stays that trip, having finished second at Sandown when finishing best of all. And I wouldn't rule out returning to Sandown either. You could easily, in my opinion, run on the 2nd of April here, and 3 weeks later run at Sandown in the Bet365 Gold Cup. He's only 6, so he's now 6. So he's 6 for this season, for the rest of this season. There's no need to be, but if we save him until Air and he disappoints and then disappoints at Sandown, we've wasted a season. Maybe you would have had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, potentially 6 runs for the season, which is probably enough anyway. And he's only 6. You can come back as a 7-year-old and try again and maybe go a different route. If the Scottish National and Bet365 Gold Cup don't come your way, then maybe do a different route next season as a 6/7-year-old. You've got 3-4 years with him still. His better years should still be coming. So it's not like you've wasted him because he's 9 or 10 and you waited for ages, didn't give him a run and then disappoints. So I really like the thought of waiting with kitties like going to the Scottish National for 143. I think he'll run well. I think he'll get the ground that connections are waiting for. And I could see him winning that and even then going on to the Bet365 Gold Cup and running a big race there. If he wins the Scottish National and went up £6, I wouldn't be, I think he can win off 150, 152. So 143 with his conditions and then winning and going up, I still think he would be interesting in both of those races. Normally those sort of races would be, too close and they're too far and they would really tire a horse out. But he's so young, this horse, I think he can do those. So there's some horses. There's quite a lot this week, unfortunately, or there's quite a lot to listen to. Over 22 minutes of video. Hopefully there's a few future winners there. We've got some for Cheltenham. We've got some for feature handicaps coming up at Ascot. And hopefully even a Scottish National horse there. Thanks for listening. And I will be doing another video. I'm just looking up on my board to tell me what I've got to do. A Cheltenham day-by-day analysis, looking at those that I've highlighted for different races at Cheltenham so far, and going back over them. Do I like them? Do I not like them? Are they not as strong as I thought? And we'll go through those, hopefully today, maybe tomorrow. Thanks for listening and have a great week. I think most of you, or some of you, will be back to work now. So you'll have to listen to this later this evening. Thanks, guys.